A new study was just done on people all over the world. Unfortunately, the numbers have come back, and it shows Australians and Americans, sadly, are the least likely people to buy an electric car. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Welcome back, everyone else. Now, I've just moved states, and I've joined a few community message boards here where I live. There is definitely a very large number of people in this area here, unfortunately, that are, well, extremely hesitant to change, very afraid of change. Anything that involves any kind of change to them is dangerous, scary. You should run away from it. You should be afraid of it. And that's renewable energy, electric cars, things that improve the world, make it better. For them, they find all the kinds of reasons why those things are negatives rather than positives. Why do they do that? Because it's scary. It's different. Unfortunately, a lot of Australians are like this. There's a lot of great Australians that are not like this. But unfortunately, a lot of them are. Even so-called engineers and experts and people who say that they know everything about everything, a lot of them are still really spreading misinformation and fear. This misinformation and fear is what's leading many people to believe that EVs are bad, that the fires in EVs are more common. The truth is, plug-in hybrid fires are exceptionally common, even more common than gasoline, petrol-powered cars. But EV fires are much less likely than fires in any other type of vehicle. But of course, many people believe that if you drive an EV at some point in time, you're going to end up bursting into flames, or your battery pack is going to have to be replaced within only a few years. Just silly things. And I believe that that's why this survey, this study shows only a very small number of Americans and Australians want to buy an EV for their next car. But maybe the people who did this survey, this study, received some funding from oil companies or from Toyota. I don't know, because I am a little bit surprised to see these results. A new report suggests that Australians and Americans are significantly less likely than Japanese, Korean, German, Southeast Asian, and particularly Chinese consumers to want to buy an electric car for their next vehicle. This report from Savvy, which is basically a company that puts together data like this, has underpinned a Deloitte survey of 26,000 consumers across 24 countries in regions including Japan, United States, Australia, India, Southeast Asia, Germany, China, and South Korea. And this study showed that, unfortunately, of all those areas that I just mentioned, America and Australia are dead last in planned purchases of EVs. It says only 8% of Australians would consider an electric vehicle as their next car purchase, and the same number was in place for Americans. It was 8% for both Australians and Americans. Guys, I love Australians and Americans, but this sort of thing does make me very disappointed. However, is there some bias in this study? I mean, could there be some biases? Was the study big enough to be a true representation of what all Americans think or what all Australians think? Well, I don't think it is. In fact, I mean, you really have to be asking the right questions to the right people in order to get the right answers. Or what I'm saying here is, I don't think this study asked enough people to really give us a true indication of what all Americans think and what all Australians think. However, that said, according to the study, 53% of Australians surveyed said the price premium EVs carry over combustion-powered vehicles was their premium. They're basically the number one reason why they don't want to buy an EV for the next car, which is pretty surprising to me considering the reduction in prices of electric cars over the past 12 months has been massive. I mean, here in Australia now, EVs are really not expensive at all based on, we have a whole bunch of new models of vehicles now that cost around $25,000 US, around maybe $26,000 US, but around that price, there's quite a few choices now here in Australia. 50% of those surveyed said charging times were their top concern, followed by a lack of public EV charging infrastructure at 51%. The study found that over 50% of Australians surveyed would purchase an internal combustion powered vehicle as their next car. 20% want to purchase a hybrid, 12% want a plug-in hybrid, which I think it shows you there's not a lot of people who understand this. In fact, there's very few people I've spoken to understand the very significant risks involved with plug-in hybrids. Fires now in them are honestly much higher than what the public are aware. If you actually look at the statistics, look at the numbers, which we have massive amounts of data for, plug-in hybrids are far more likely to actually catch fire than EVs or basically internal combustion engine vehicles. In a similar survey conducted 12 months ago, 68% of Australians claimed they would purchase an internal combustion vehicle. So basically, there is clearly a trend to saying less people want purely internal combustion. But the trend towards EVs in Australia and America, it hasn't changed all that much over the past 12 months. With 8% of Australians surveyed saying they wanted EV as their next car, basically those were the same numbers that the United States had and India had as well. But you got to remember in India that there is a significant lack of choice. There's not a lot of EVs in India. Plus, India has these enormous taxes on foreign vehicles. They don't make many EVs themselves. So there's very little choice on Indian-made electric cars. And those that are Tesla, BYDs, etc., have enormous taxes on them. They're just ridiculous. So it does make EVs or cars in general harder to buy for Indians. China, 27%. Has the largest amount of consumers who intend to purchase an EV as their next vehicle. But this does make me question the survey. Now, 20% is a good number, but the reality is here, that's even less than the amount of people who are actually even buying an EV today in China. It doesn't really seem entirely accurate. I would have thought that the Chinese number would be closer to maybe 50% based on the current sales figures we're seeing today in China. And I report on those every single month. They're basically indicating that, probably 40 to 50, maybe even 60% of consumers would be seriously considering an EV right now from the sales statistics we're seeing. And I'm talking millions of sales here. Anyway, the study found Australian consumers' top reason for purchasing an EV was lower running costs because fuel is expensive here. Guys, in America, your fuel prices are quite a lot lower than what they are here in Australia. You guys do produce a lot of your own gasoline. We don't really produce much. Anyway, either way, it's much more expensive there. And the other thing is here in Australia, we have heaps of renewable energy. We just hit new records. 73% last week was our new record for the entire Australian grid. For a little while, it ran on 73% renewables. Some states in Australia are running purely on renewables much of the time. And many Australians have their own solar. In fact, many Australians have their own solar and batteries. So it is true, you'll save a lot of money on running costs if you purchase an EV in Australia. But the same applies in the United States. You guys also have many sunny places over there which have a lot of sun all year round. The study found that consumers from the US and Australia had concerns about climate change, and they were also concerned about lowering maintenance requirements and a better driving experience. But there was this kind of myth out there that EVs are twice the weight of an internal combustion engine vehicle, literally twice the weight. There's YouTubers out there, please don't support these people telling you this stuff, double the weight. I mean, the Tesla Model 3 weighs about 1,750 kilograms. The Mercedes C-Class weighs about 1,780 kilograms. It depends on the model you're comparing, but in general, EVs might be 20% heavier, but saying double the weight is just utterly nonsensical. Anyway, this is one interesting thing. Australia scored the least likely for people to buy an EV based on a better driving experience. So Australians think it's a worse driving experience to drive an EV. In my experience, it's actually significantly better. I've driven a lot of different cars. In fact, I've driven heaps of cars, rented different cars. I do it regularly. I don't really talk about it on the channel, but whenever I travel, I rent cars. And I've got to tell you, driving an EV is just so much better. China, interesting, right? We have this perception, sometimes a negative perception of China. I don't think it's fair, but it is there. Chinese people said the top factor in purchasing an EV was a better driving experience. They say they're better to drive. India, Southeast Asia, and the United States also said EVs, they believe, are better to drive, and therefore that is a significant part of their purchasing decision making. The report said that Australians are the most impatient when it comes to their electric cars. 47% of consumers expecting to charge their vehicle at a public charger from 0 to 80% in less than 20 minutes. However, 25% of Australian consumers want EVs to offer at least 600 kilometres or around 400 miles of range minimum or more. 25%. That's fair, I guess. There's probably quite a few people who drive long distances. South Korea and Germany were similarly demanding. Apparently, 28% and 30% of those surveyed wanted that much range. So range is clearly still a factor for some people. And I don't think there's any point critiquing that. Just that's how they feel, and that's probably based around their lifestyles and what they do. So my point here would be to say, the new battery technology we've seen come out within the last 6 months, in particular that from CATL, the world's largest battery company, will enable much longer range. Keep in mind as well, more companies are making structural battery packs. They're using batteries with a little bit higher energy density, better pack volume, energy density, using gigacasting to lower the weight of vehicles. That's becoming more commonplace now. Ford, Hyundai, other manufacturers have ordered those machines from Hydra in Italy that Tesla use. So weights of EVs will continue to come down. Range, as a result, will continue to go up because of those energy density improvements and lower weight cars. So I think this will change. I think people's perceptions of these vehicles will change over the next few years, but it's still a bit disappointing to hear so many people be quite anti-EV here in Australia in particular. I know there's a lot of people like that, unfortunately, as well in a number of other countries. So looking at this report here, you can see that 13% of Japanese buyers want to buy an EV as their car. They're looking for an EV now, 13%. But of course, EV sales in Japan are way under that number. And it does show you that Toyota's claims are categorically false, because if the reality here is, right, that Toyota was providing EV sales and choice for its buyers. Toyota says it just provides something for everyone. It provides a choice of every type of drivetrain for everyone. Why is it then that Toyota's EV sales are so slow or so incredibly low in Japan when 13% of buyers actually want to buy one? It shows Toyota that there is the demand. They just need to actually cater to that demand. They're not catering to that demand. In fact, the truth is Japanese companies are not catering to that demand. And that's probably one of the key reasons why BYD just showed off its electric cars at the Japanese Motor Show yesterday. BYD is saying, well, you know what? If you guys in Japan don't want to provide electric cars in large numbers or large enough numbers for the Japanese market, then we'll do it for you. That's what is called disruption. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this report. Do you think this is true? Do you think this represents what you've been seeing and hearing on the street? Thanks for watching.